Hi, everyone. Welcome back again for another Talk Within the Nine-Sided Circle at our usual weekly Sunday time. I'm one of your two hosts, Nor Kyle.
And I am the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
So, thank you for joining us. We have yet another hot topic tonight, but first we need to do our spiel. Mushtaq, would you like to do the honors?
I suppose so. Welcome. If you're watching this on YouTube, we are glad to have you. If this is your first time watching us on YouTube, or even your 10th time watching us on YouTube, I would like to suggest to you that it would be an absolutely wonderful thing if you were to subscribe to our channel by hitting that subscription button. And in some ways, even more important than that, hit the like button, because as it turns out, the thing that makes us go up in the algorithm so people can find us is how many people like our videos.
Those
So
pesky algorithms,
those pesky
yes.
algorithms. So if you like us, like our videos, and maybe some people who you know will see them. And if you don't like our videos anyway, and people who you hate might see them. It's all good. Um, and so that's what we have to ask for you today. Like our videos and subscribe to our channel. And the other thing is leave comments because we love to hear from you. We love to hear, who are you? What did you get out of this? Was it worth it to you? Any of these things, questions that you have, we have answers. If you have answers, we have the questions to go with them.
Yeah, we often end up having really good dialogues in the comments. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to reach out and start a conversation with us. So,
There we have it.
yeah, good spiel. Good job. All right. So, we were inspired this week to hop onto the topic of relationships. And we've touched on this before, but we really want to hone in on the Sufi perspective of this because there is very much a deepening component to relationships from the Sufi perspective. So, what was the title we gave to this talk? It was
Between lover and beloved.
yes. So,
You just froze. Uh-oh.
it's
We
doing
all,
that thing
yeah,
that
it
it
did that thing.
does.
So
Yeah.
you're back now. So you were saying,
Saying that this means we have to talk about not only, relationships in the abstract, but specifically love and sex and intimacy and things of that nature and the engagement, the true engagement that goes on between people in relationship. We seem to forget about that often. And think about, the superficialities or the how do I meet someone or the, you know, taking care of the kids and all of that stuff, keeping our day job while taking care of all the other responsibilities. But we forget how important it is to really take care of our primary relationships. So, how do we get started with that tonight, Mushtaq?
1 second, I have bunches of messages coming out of people who are having difficulty getting into the
Oh,
talks.
really? Is there anything I can field for
Nope,
you?
nope, it's all coming in on my messenger. But hopefully that will do it and somebody will pop in any moment now. All right, so where were we?
We're talking about nourishing our most intimate relationships.
Yes. So, where to start with this? So let's talk a little bit about the Sufi perspective on this. Um, for Muslims in general, well, used to be for Muslims in general, and for Sufis in particular, there are two examples of relationship that we have that we hold up as how things should be. The first is the Prophet Muhammad and his wife Khadija. She was his first wife, and their relationship from start to finish, and it lasted for like 25 years before she died, um, was quite amazing for the time. It would be amazing today. So, who was Khadija? She was a woman who was CEO of the most successful import export company in Mecca. That's what she did. She bought and sold goods, and she was really good at it. She had been married twice before. Um, each of those husbands passed away fairly early, and she inherited all of their wealth, plus the wealth of her father, who was also a merchant, and she turned that into a bit of an empire. Um, she had a couple of kids from her previous marriages, and so she was not able to go out and bargain on her own. So she hired people to take the caravans to Syria or wherever they were going. And one of the people she hired was this young dude named Mohammed, who was 15 years her junior. And it went very well. He made double the money of anybody else who had ever taken a caravan for her. And part of that was probably because he was not skimming off the top. Uh,
A really good reputation for
yes,
being someone who could be trusted and relied upon to do the right thing and do it well.
yes. And that was the thing. He came back, and uh, a good friend of mine has just entered into.
Yes, a friend of ours, yeah.
Yeah. Salam alaikum, Aisha.
Alaikum salam, Guru Mushtaq and Noor. How are you?
And even better now that you're here. Hi.
I saw the link just in time. I miss you both very much, and you're always on my mind. I told just a few Guru Mushtaq stories to folks at work just this week,
Uh-oh.
and never bad things. So yeah, I felt blessed. I saw this link in time to join you.
Good.
Good.
Well,
Sorry for my target.
yeah, feel free to chime in on any of this that you would like, because I know that this is a topic that you know something about.
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no pressure.
Whatever you feel comfortable with, yeah.
Oh no, of course, yeah. I'm just really, really happy to join you. And Guru Mushtaq knows I'm really good at talking when the mood strikes me.
Yes, and hopefully it will. Aisha's a very old and dear friend of mine. Uh, one of the few people who I let call me Guru because she was one of my Silat students once upon a time. Um, and she's very wise. Don't tell her I said that. Anyway,
Well,
so
thank you.
we're talking about Prophet Muhammad and his wife Khadija and how they are an example of a really good, healthy relationship, and one that we can all learn from, whether you're a Muslim or not, and one that I have always had held up to me as something to strive for in relationship. So here you have this incredibly successful woman and this young nobody, and she looks at him and she is very, very impressed. Now, I should tell you that she had marriage offers up the wazoo. Everybody wanted to marry this woman because she was rich and successful. And yet, she proposed to the prophet. The prophet didn't propose to her. She proposed to the prophet, which is, I find, exceptional.
And he wasn't even anybody special at that time, except that
Yeah.
he had this positive reputation of being.
Yeah, he was a young whippersnapper.
Yeah.
Can we say that and not go to hell?
I think it's part of the teaching, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was basically a nobody. He was an orphan, though she was an orphan as well, as it comes to it, because she had lost her father and she had lost her husbands and all like that. And their relationship was, by all accounts, amazing. They worked in true partnership for all of her life. And it should be noted that he never took another wife as long as she was alive, even though it would have been way politically expedient for him to do so. And remember, alliances were cemented through marriage during this time. Um, and so this is something to consider. He had several children with her. Um, a, a lot of them died, but what was it, three or four lived? And they were all daughters. And there's argument about who were his kids and who were uh, kids from the former marriage, and I don't care. Um, but things we know, they work together. Someone asked him once, "Oh, Prophet, what do you do at home?" And he said, "I serve my wife." Think about that. I serve my wife. That's something that you didn't find a lot of back in the day, or any sense of that. So we can tell from the accounts of the Prophet and Khadijah that they had a subject-subject relationship. She was not an object to him. He was not an object to her. Neither of them were a means to an end. They were an actual loving couple. And they kept that for um, the entirety of her life. And they supported each other through the really rough times that came after he started getting the messages from the angel telling him to recite the Quran. And it was hard times. Khadija ended up using almost all of her money to support the community because they were being oppressed by the Meccan pagans. And so we learn a lot from her. And did McQueen have a question?
Yeah. Do you want
I
to chime
don't
in?
see it, so he sent it.
No, it's because he has his hand up in the corner of his screen.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's for just more clarification from your story because it's a good one so far. So there's stories about Muhammad having a whole bunch of wives and all that stuff. But just to be clear, you're saying that was all like after this. This was like a period of time he was just rock solid, him and his lady, until she died or something. What can you
Yeah.
make sure I understand that? And the second one
Yeah.
was you said subject. Tell me what you mean when you say subject.
Each of them perceived the other as subject, as a living being, as having their own inwardness, as opposed to subject object, where you see the other person as an object of your desire. And yes, the Prophet, while Khadijah was alive, he was completely devoted to her as his wife. He married women when he went to Medina. Most of them were widows. And you have to understand that in that society at that time, uh, women without a someone to support them, someone to protect them, were often victims. And so he married a whole bunch of widows. He had one marriage, well, he had a couple of marriages that were alliance marriages. And any of the other wives that are mentioned, sometimes they didn't even live anywhere near him. And the bigots of today don't mention this fact. that he married these women to support and protect them from being harassed and victimized. And that's the history of it as I know it, and I have no reason to doubt it because all of the accounts seem to agree with that. So remember, this is a time when marriage was seen as more of a political maneuver than anything else. And in his case with Khadija, it was a marriage of love. I mean,
Yeah, as Aisha says, he
yeah,
loved Khadija until the day he died and openly said so, she believes. And yeah,
and she is correct, yes.
I mean, Mushtaq and I talk about how it seems to each of us that, you know, he never really got over the loss of her when she passed away.
Yeah, and I believe that she was such a support to him, and he was such a support to her. You know, their marriage allowed each of them to grow and become who they were. She was the one who took care of him when he started getting these revelations. The story has it he's up in the cave and Gabriel comes and says, recite. And it's so overwhelming to him. And he thinks he's lost his mind. And he comes down off the mountain and he goes into his house and he's curled up in a ball and he tells his wife, cover me up. And she gets a blanket and covers him up and holds him and comforts him and tells him it's going to be all right. Um, And we could argue that if it were not for her support, he might not have been able to stand the strain of prophethood, because by all accounts, it's not something you choose to go through. It's hard on you. Just, touching the divine reality that closely can burn you out. So, um, something to consider. So, there is one example that we have, probably the prime example of what a couple should be. Now, when I say a couple, I'm going to tell y'all, and people don't like it, that's their problem. To me, a couple is any two people who are together. I do not care if they are straight or gay or trans or whatever. Human beings are human beings. Human souls are human souls. And if they get together and they work together, I'm good with it. The world is better off for that. So,
And he and I are 100% on the same page with that.
yeah.
Yeah, that stuff is irrelevant.
So, if you want to argue about that, you can write me privately and I'll probably ignore you, but you can. Um, anyway, so the other example that we have, though there's not quite as much written about it, which is unfortunate, is the Prophet's daughter Fatima and her husband Ali. Um, Now, I will tell you that when Fatima was single, she had hundreds of people asking the Prophet for her hand in marriage. And some of them were very prominent. I know Abu Bakr, who was one of the Prophet's good buddies, wanted to marry her. And the Prophet refused all of them, saying, God will let me know when the right person comes. And as it turns out, the right person was his cousin, Ali. The two of them kind of grew up together, at least in part. And um, I, I surmised that they actually loved each other, that they had fallen in love. And even though Ali didn't have all that much, the Prophet asked his daughter, what about this guy? And she's like, yeah. This is my interpretation of it, of course. I'm sure it was much more decorous than that. Decorous, whatever the word is. And again, It was a marriage that lasted for a lifetime. And Ali never took a second wife that I know of. Um, and even though there were a lot of struggles going on in the time that they were married, they held on to each other and worked together and were a true partnership. And so those are the two examples that I have of marriage from a Sufi point of view. And those are ones, either of which are worth emulating. And we can avoid all of the politics involved in this because, frankly, it's very tedious. So, what does this mean for us today? Oh, there's one other example, actually, I should mention. Ibn Arabi met a beautiful young Persian girl when he was in Mecca. And after this meeting, he pretty much decided that beautiful young Persian girls were the ideal metaphor for God. He wrote some pretty damn good poetry about this in a book called the Tarjuman al-Ashwaq. And it's interesting because the nature of the poetry is erotic. And he actually had to write 2 series of explanations so people would get that he wasn't talking about really wanting to hook up with this beautiful Persian girl who was the daughter of a great Sufi sheikh from Iran. But it was about the experience of the soul longing for unity with the divine. Now, as it happens, the personal relationship that one can have ideally mirrors this. Your partner can be a mirror for the divine. This requires a few things on your part and on your partner's part. Adulthood is one of them. This is not for children. And again, this comes down to subject-subject relationship. What Martin Buber referred to as the I-thou relationship. Experiencing the other as consciousness, as an entity, as other than an object. And yes, you've heard us talk about this before. And it is still the most important thing that we can bring up in talking about human interaction in general and interaction with the beloved as in specific. In the little blurb that we wrote up, I quoted from memory an old Sufi saying about, I came to the door of the beloved and knocked, and she said, "Who is it?" And I said, "It's me." And she said, "Go away because you're not her lover." After a time I came back and I knocked, and she said, "Who is it?" And I said, "It's you." And she said, "Come in because now you know what love is."
The Queen says, I love that story. Never heard it before.
Yeah, I loved it too. And it's stuck with me all these years. I think I first heard it back in the early 1970s. And it's rattled around in my head ever since. There's a few things like that. Most of them get me in trouble, but that one is okay. So, right now, we are experiencing, in the world especially, in the States in particular, a crisis in relationship. you have a less than 50-50 chance of your relationship working for any length of time, whether you're married or single, married or unmarried, right? You get together, you go for a couple of years, everything falls apart, you move on to the next partner, there's heartbreak, there's rending of cloths, there's all of this stuff. And then you do it again. And if you get married, then you have all of the legal stuff that you have to deal with. And if there are children, yeehaw. So, what's to do about it?
First of all, why does it matter that we do something about it, right?
Yeah, why does it matter? What's wrong with just having a partner until they bore you and then finding another one? Is there anything wrong with it?
I mean, Islamically speaking, divorce is certainly allowed, or
Yes.
separation or whatever.
Yep. And in some areas of Islam, casual hookups are allowed. There was a tradition called muta, or temporary marriage, where you would temporarily marry a woman and you'd sleep together for the length of the contract and then you go your separate ways. That was a thing once upon a time. Still is a thing in certain places.
Great. I see you unmuted.
Yeah, do we have the ability to divorce much too easy in this current time? Do you think that we then don't put in the effort when things get tough?
I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah. I don't think that's the real problem.
Yeah. In the Islamic world, divorce ideally is pretty simple. But the thing is, for me, so Nora could walk out at any day, any time. Think about that. Whether we're married or we're not married, she could just go out the door. So to me, that means I need to work to make sure that she never wants to. That's the real secret.
Yes. So in saying that, we are, before we even begin, we have to have a capacity of what is the divine to us to make it
Yes.
so precious.
Yeah, and this
I
goes
think that's
back
a good
to,
thing just to think about. Yeah.
yeah, this goes back to adulthood again. Partnership is for adults. It's not for children.
This isn't a game. You know, we're not just amusing ourselves.
Yeah.
This isn't just passing the time. And it's hookups, as long as people are really seeing each other as, you know, people who are able to hurt one another potentially. You need to take that into consideration. But if we're talking about meaningful, long-term invested relationships, that takes a lot more than I like you and I find you attractive. Or
Yeah.
whatever it is may be the glue that's making a couple of people stick together for a while.
And it's
And-
more than what you can do for me, it's what I can do for you.
And what we can do for us.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because as you say, that Nor can walk away at any time, gives her a equal choice. Whether
It's agency, yeah.
Yeah, there's no hierarchical system. It's equal. Everyone's treated equally.
Yeah, she is
Value.
not property.
No.
She
It's
is a
a choosing.
human being.
Yeah.
And we choose to be together.
Mm.
As weird as that might seem, I can, to this day, can't figure out why, but we do.
So why? I don't understand.
I mean, a lot of us may ask ourselves, why does my person want to be with me? Ew, like I wouldn't want to be with me. If someone has low self-esteem or they're feeling like it's really hard to see value in one's own self, we may ask that question, why does this person want to be with me? Or vice versa. But the fact is, as long as agency is there, as long as it's a choice to invest and be invested in, I think a lot of people actually find that hard to hold on to without freaking out in some way. Like, why does this person want to be with me? Why do they feel like I'm worth investing in? And that's kind of part of the risk that we take, is to see value in ourselves in that way, as much as we may see value in the other person as well, ideally.
So recognizing the divine in ourselves is also the divine in the partner. But the key word there is partnership.
Yes.
It's not a one-way street. There is movement from both sides and an effort on both
Yes.
sides. Not just a passive thing, that's your role, that's my role, that's it, the end. You know, things happen, things change, and being able to work together and allow the other person to do things and allow yourself to do things, and it's not seeking permission, it's actually a collaboration. It's quite different, that you're bringing things together.
Yes. I mean, laterality one way or the other is probably going to be problematic, whether you're like, I'm going to do this, or the other person's like, you're going to do this. It's probably most ideal and most beneficial and most productive and most enriching to have a sense of, I want to do this. Are you on board with that? What do you think?
Yeah, and that gets us to the idea that partnership, as represented by marriage or any other arrangement, is not the goal. It is the beginning of the work. And all too many people think, oh, I've succeeded. I've gotten married. I have this beautiful partner and I've married them. So that's it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that that is one reason that a lot of marriages fail, because partnership takes work, and it takes understanding that the other part of the partnership, um, what am I looking for, Nor? How do I explain this?
Well, it's the beginning of the journey rather than the end of the journey.
Yeah,
Just
and it's where the work starts.
And I think it's worth saying, because we are talking about this in the context of, it doesn't matter what permutation the relationship is taking form in. That includes whether you may have perhaps multiple partners. Most people don't make that choice, but for some people, it may be a worthy choice. All of this applies.
Yeah.
If you're going to have really deep, meaningful connections.
Yeah, we have no problem with polygamy. We also have no problem with polyandry. And that freaks some people out. I see if, one guy wants to have 4 wives, great. But a woman should be allowed to have 4 husbands.
That sounds so tiring.
That's the thing, though. That's why a lot of people would not make that choice, because taking this journey with one person is challenging enough. And it's a lot to, bring out in oneself to be able to make that level of commitment to more than one person if you want to walk this path with them. I think that's another thing, right? We're talking about a very specific form of relating, in that we're talking about having an adult, soul felt relationship with another person. So the journey begins there. You start your journey together.
Yep. And just before we started the talk, I saw something that I thought was so to the point, which is marriage advice from Gomez Adams. If you observe how Gomez acts towards Morticia, he greets her every time he meets her. It's as if he hasn't seen her for years. He is so enthusiastic about meeting her that it's everybody around them is almost taken aback. He's completely blatant about it. And that requires taking a risk. It's, I think that couples goals, yes.
Yes, I should.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, in order to do things like this, you have to be utterly open to your partner and utterly vulnerable. In order to be these things, you have to trust the other. And that means that you have to trust that the other, your partner, will protect your inwardness. We've all had the experience of telling somebody something really personal and intimate and vulnerable. And then sometime later, you're squabbling with them and they bring it up and throw it in your face. This is not conducive to a real relationship. If I told Nora something, I know without a doubt that she will never use that as a weapon. And hopefully vice versa.
Imagine you doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thoughts, Nora?
Um, it can take, I mean, this is where developing that sense of maturity comes in. I guess I don't personally feel an impulse to ever hurt you in that way, but I can see in a relationship in which there is a more, like, say, adolescent dynamic, not fully adult, that impulse might come up more because it's like you're feeding into each other's impulses in that way. You're not choosing to adult, you're not choosing to there. It may start with a little bit of restraint at first, a little bit of self-discipline. Like, I do not want to make this choice to hurt my partner. Of course, in return, you hope that they do the same. And if they are the kind of person who is really on board with sharing this path with you, they're going to make that commitment too. And if you guys slip up, how are you going to remedy that? How are you going to address it in such a way that you see it for what it is, which is, a breach of trust? How do you remedy that in a way that going forward, both of you are doing your best? Yes. And this is a classic example, as Levita mentions, of, instead of fighting for who is right in a given situation, fighting for what is right can be better.
And you know what all of this is practice for? Believe it or not, this is all just practice. Any guesses?
What's it practice for?
It's practice for sex. Gasp. Why is that the case?
Levita says consent.
Consent is part of it. There is no adult sex without consent. There are two kinds of sex. There is the sex of children and the sex of adults.
And that is a scandalous thing to say, isn't it?
I don't care. It's
Yeah.
the truth.
Enthusiastic consent. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
ideal. Absolutely.
Ideal, yes. Well, without it, it's not worth a damn. Now, an adolescent male will have nearly uncontrollable urges to mate with anything sort of female shaped, animal,
Assuming,
vegetable, or mineral.
assuming they have that proclivity, but
Yeah. Or male shaped if they're gay. It doesn't matter. But it's an impulse. And during that period, they are seeing the other as object. I can remember back when I was 13 years old, 14 years old, sitting around with the boys and having them talk about girls that they really wanted to bang. And nothing about that said anything about the girls. There was nothing about that that had any sense of, oh, I would really like to be with this girl because she has such a sense of poetry about her. Think about that. You know, I mean, some of you were adolescent males and you know what I'm talking about, whether you want to admit it or not. Think back to that time when you were completely overwhelmed by your hormones.
I can't quite speak to that experience. However, I do remember as a teenager, there was that objectification factor in the sense that I was in a position of not really caring about the feelings of the other if I got what I wanted. I mean, in this case, we're talking about sex. So it's a slightly different twist on it, but it's still objectification in which I was not seeing the subjectivity of whoever else might be involved.
There's a line from the Spanda Karika, which is a truly wonderful bit of work, dictated by the god Shiva to some sage or another. I forget his name at the moment, but which is terrible of me. But it says basically that which awakens the yogi enslaves the ordinary person. You can see this as a metaphor for a number of things, but sex is probably the ultimate metaphor for this. If you are asleep, if you are working from your conditioned robotic self, then you do not perceive the other as an inwardness. And if you don't do that, you cannot open yourself to them. And if you don't do that, you're not having sex. You're just masturbating with an object. Again, I'm sorry if you're shocked, but I'm assuming that everybody here is adults. Now, the yogi, on the other hand, realizes that if he or she allows themselves to be open to the divine union of energy, then it exalts them, it enlightens them. But that requires such utter vulnerability that most people can't do it. And they run from it.
Quick question of clarity, if you don't mind.
Yes.
One thing that I found interesting was that you were saying that, you know, when we're young, we tend to have these relationships where we are, you know, turning this person into a thing or an object.
Yeah, when we're children.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we need to be very specific in what
Yeah.
we mean by that. But sure, I
Thank
want
you.
to finish your thought though first.
Well, I guess sometimes I think I'm definitely being unfair towards the male gender here, but sometimes I feel like people don't necessarily, and it could be either gender, truly, if I'm any gender, if I'm being fair, don't grow out of that, right? They don't necessarily at the age of 30 or at a specific age or 25 or something go from transitioning from just seeing it as sex, and that's fine, like grown folks do what you want, but sometimes it seems like people are still busy, turning other people into objects instead of it.
You are absolutely correct. And our contention is that these people are not adults. They are oftentimes 10-year-olds with 30 years of practice. To be an adult human being is an intentional act, and most people don't take that step. Most people, in my experience, literally stop evolving at puberty. And you don't go beyond that without work.
Thank you for the clarity. That makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense.
Olive oil?
Yes, that's why I had you off video for a second and I had to get my scarf. I'm making dinner molokhia. Have you had molokhia, Guru?
I have, but it has been far too long.
I really hope that if you all have a chance, you try it during Ramadan. It's really great and can be made vegetarian, and it's ancient jute, Jute. And I only find it at like halal markets. It's my favorite.
Yum.
Well, it's my spouse's favorite actually, and he just flew back from Arizona helping my dads fix their roof. So I wanted to fix something really nice when he gets up because I am hungry.
All right, keep up the good work. Where were we? Oh yes. So yeah, I mean, I would say well into my 20s, I had the perspective that connecting on this level was too scary, and I hadn't really had any opportunities. I hadn't met anyone who would be even remotely able to meet me at that level in the first place. So it was just a perpetuation of, like I said, my teenage attitude of, for the most part, with some meanderings in different directions, that other people's feelings were almost irrelevant, and it was just about getting my sexual needs met, and their feelings were their responsibility. And I think some people have a different experience in which they feel sexually used. So someone like me might come along and not take care in consideration of another person's feelings, and then they end up hurt. Certainly did happen. But growing up from that opened up so many different opportunities for connection. Things that I was hungry for, much more possible.
So, how do we do these things? This is not a rhetorical question. I am open to suggestions. I have a few, Noor has a few, but y'all are smart. If you weren't smart, you wouldn't be here. I like that.
What was the full question?
How do we achieve this? What do we need to do to grow up to the point where we are capable of having an adult relationship with another human being and using that as a tool for our own and the other's perfection, our completion?
learning about our nafs and who we are, working on being better grown-up people.
Mm-hmm. And how do we do that? I mean, in our language, that's exactly what it is. Nafs is our mechanical self, our conditioning. You know, nafs al-amara is the commanding self. And that's a way to describe the conditioning that we have that allows us to go through life in a completely unconscious manner. And we have to struggle against that. We have to wake up from it. We have to free ourselves from our own conditioning.
I'm gonna spell out this word for you, McLean. Nafs.
Yes.
C double. There we go.
You know, I hadn't thought too much about that word. Does that mean the root has an actual S at the end? In Arabic, it's like nafas.
Yeah. It's
Oh, so what's the plural? Is there no drama?
there's a bunch of plurals to it, depending on how it's used. If only Wael were here. Wael,
Yeah.
where are you when I need you?
Sleeping,
Yeah, hopefully.
living
Hopefully
life.
he is sleeping or working, depending.
I bet it's an unusual plural, like unwefs or no wefs or something.
Yeah.
Now I have to look it up.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but the root is nun sin fi.
So it is similarly
Nun fi
used to the
sin.
word ego in
Yeah.
the negative sense, like being
Yeah.
caught up in your ego. And it's not
Nafas. Yeah.
a bad thing, but it is often mechanical, or it is mechanical in nature. And that's the primary thing that we need to be thinking about, relevant to our context. Jayesh has a question or a comment.
Yes.
So we discussed that other is mirroring divine. But I feel there is one more intermittent step for that. And first of all, other is mirroring my own subconscious. And whenever I get irritated, so from the other person, I can take it like it's my own subconscious is reflecting. Maybe she's reflecting my own subconscious, and I can take it that way, that she's a messenger, and I should not kill the
Yeah.
messenger.
That is absolutely, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's an area that we haven't touched on in this talk, and it needs to be. Yes, your partner can mirror your subconscious back to you. And if you have not grown up enough, you have to realize that you carry around inside of you an image of who your partner is supposed to be, and you will try and paint that image on everybody. And that is disastrous, because your image of who your ideal man or woman is does not exist outside of your head, and is always two-dimensional. In my experience, I've never met that image as three dimensions, not in myself or not in anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, that got me in big trouble in past situations with people that I really cared about.
Yeah.
It was the image that I was so attached to. It was the image that arguably it was the image that I was in love with, and not the actual person.
Yep. And as you begin coming out of that, then what you get is your partner mirroring for you the contents of your own ego. So do not kill the messenger. Look at the message and go, what about me is here? Does that all make sense?
I got a comment. I haven't heard you mention this aspect. I think you're going to like it. The question is how to do it. Somehow you have to change. I don't know the bit about getting here, but your mind has to change to the point where you can begin to be willing to accept struggles and challenges and tests that reveal your flaws. And you have to not resist these things and say, yes, those are my flaws. I need to work on these things. I need to mature. I need to grow up. It's uncomfortable and nobody wants to do that. It's like a laboratory and the other person's helping you run the experiment.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if you experienced this, Mushtaq, but as someone who is younger and who still has a lot of life experiences to work through, that rings true for me personally.
Oh yeah, that's pretty much part of the human condition.
Yeah.
Not saying that I've ever done that, of course. Might have happened somewhere.
Well, I noticed that there are things that come up where it's like, wow, I'm feeling childlike in the sense that I have not addressed this issue before. How do I work through this? And in a way, I have to like bounce that off of you, like. And thankfully, you're able to hold space for me as I do that.
Yeah,
because then I can, I come out on the other side of it.
Way.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we've been through that on your end now that I think about it as well.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think that I'm already perfect, but myself.
I mean, he's not, and neither am I. But that's almost beside the point entirely. In that, I guess what I mean by that is there are certain things I'm still learning about myself, given the fact that I am, I still have a lot of learning to do about all the things that I went out of my life in a number of ways.
Yeah. And you are still young.
Yes.
Of course, I'm still young.
Yeah.
That's
why it works.
I've just had more experience at being young than you have.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Ramadan is always a time for me to see all my flaws a lot, I think. Without coffee and without food, I feel like I go around and see my flaws everywhere and realize like all the ways I can be better. Like my naps are just like on display.
Yeah.
Yay, Ramadan in one more week.
It's a vulnerable time.
Wonderful things about fasting is that it'll bring your shit up for you.
Yeah, even when we do our retreats once a year for a month, people start noticing, wow, I really have an attachment to my sugar, comforts, and who knows what else. 3, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about, we're watching right now, Aisha make this food for her husband, a special dish for her husband. There's a clear example right there. She's doing a service for someone she loves. And I find that with my husband too, that if I start resenting the service, then I've let the naff take over. So I've actually really always trying to commit to serving with a full heart. So it's not begrudging that service. Oh, he didn't clean up the kitchen again, or he spilled on the floor again, or he's left the bathroom in a horrendous state, or he never thinks to wash the clothes and I have to do it all, and all that sort of thing. And when you start resenting that service, then you're being childish and temperamental, and you've forgotten that service is from your heart and you don't score keep. That's a big thing. There's no even this or that. If you really get over yourself over that, as an adult, I can do this. I have the energy to do this. I like doing this. I find a way to like ironing. I like laundry. I like folding. I like cooking. I did cooking before I went to bed, put something on a slow cook, got up this morning, the house smells amazing, and it's just like, he wants to eat it right now for breakfast and it's for dinner. And I go, why not? It's like, why have, the meat sauce later? If he wants to eat it now and he says, oh, that was the best ever, I've just got something back at me. He served me and what I just did. So there's always little things all the time, little everyday things that just help you grow as a human being to recognize, oh, that person did something, and I'll send him a message and say, I noticed you did this. You know, that's wonderful, babe. You know, and just that acknowledgement. You're not waiting for them to serve you. I think we've got to get over that too, because sometimes we think, oh, you know, he never does this or he never does that, but he's doing other things I don't know about. You know, so it's different. I think when you serve, you just serve, and it's so liberating when you don't score kicks. So liberating, and it's actually kind of fun. Actually, you just do your thing, and it's always flavored with love. That's
Well, I think Aisha identifies nicely with what you're saying. She says, wow, Cherie, that's so important, a reminder. So important, and a reminder I needed, maybe not today, but for sure some days. Yeah. So I think we all relate to that on some level. I think one thing I wanted to make sure we talked about during this talk was balance. Mushtaq, you and I talked about this earlier.
Yes.
And yes, service is critical, and it's important for us all to find ways in which we can be of service to each other. No, we don't want to score keep, of course, but it is important that there's a sense of, you know, being fueled up by our partner in ways that may be different from the ways that we fuel them up from day to day. Omar, we'll touch back on that in a moment. Omar, I see you unmuted.
Actually, I was going to shift the topic a little bit, so let me just stay
Okay,
silent
yeah, hold
and
on
just
to that.
continue what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, I don't do the cooking at home. That is not my scene. That doesn't mean I will never do it. I feel like the context in which we're in right now is such that it makes it challenging for both of us to do kitchen things. But nonetheless, we still have a complementary division of labor in which I do other things instead that are helpful and that he doesn't like to do. And
Folding the laundry.
yes.
She folds the laundry.
Yep. And I do a lot of the vacuuming. I do bed making. I do tidying up here and there, you know, on a regular basis, dusting. And he does so many things I couldn't even list, but neither of us are very
They balance them.
stereotypical.
They
Yeah.
balance themselves out. I do the cooking because I love to cook.
Yes.
And I'm good at it, if
He's
I
good
do
at
say
it,
so
yeah.
myself. I
I'm
can
good at
cook
the
up
eating part.
which I need. I need somebody to appreciate my food.
Yes. And I try to always tell him every single meal, thank you. I try to acknowledge his effort.
Yeah,
Because,
and I wash the dishes too, because it hurts her hands to wash the dishes, and I ain't having with that. I mean, it physically hurts them for reasons that we don't need to go into, but I look at that and go, shit, I'll wash the dishes. I don't care. You make the bed.
Mm-hmm. And
it's something for easier for her to do than for me, given our
yes. Yep. I didn't grow up with that between my parents. My mother is the homemaker. My father works his job and comes home and he wants to relax. And that was the way that I grew up. But I knew that that was not going to satisfy me in a relationship. I knew that would not be a good fit for me. And so I made sure that I kept that in mind as I went along and looked for the person who might be a good fit for me. But at the same time, you know, there are definitely moments where we need to check in with each other and be like, hey, I'm noticing this thing needs to be done. And we try to be proactive in stepping up our game when that's called for too.
So Ilmar, shift the subject.
Well, one thing sort of intrigues me is and this is a shift of subject, so I apologize if it's not appropriate at this point. But I mean, I was not aware of even Arabi's poetry, but if I look at Rumi and Hafiz, at least in their English riffs on them, I don't know how good translations they are, but there's always this talk of the relationship between you and the divine somehow being a beloved relationship. Yeah. And
Yes.
so I'm kind of intrigued by that, because if we project some of what we've been talking about now to that relationship, I mean, there is, in a sense, a union there at some point, but there's also a sense of autonomy, at least from one side. So it's both a union and an autonomy, and an openness and a vulnerability, but also expectation that, hey, what you confess is not going to be used against you. So there are a lot of things which are sort of parallel to there. And it's always kind of intrigued me how much, at least, again, the only ones I really know about much is Sufi and is Hafiz and Rumi. But they're steeped in that kind of imagery. And I was wondering if you have anything you want to expound on that area.
Because that is exactly the point of this whole discussion. When you get down to it, the ultimate relationship is between the individual spark and the divine reality. And your relationship with your partner should be practice for that. You are learning how to do this. You are learning how to let yourself go into that union. And so Rumi and Hafiz and all of the other Sufi poets are going to talk in those terms. Kabir is a good one for that.
Oh.
Or Ramabai, who people would say, she's not a Sufi. And I would say, I don't care, because she's good. And she was a devotee of Krishna. If you want to learn about the I-thou relationship, read her poetry to the Dark One. Krishna was her beloved, and there was no doubt about that.
Could somebody type her name in the inside and copy that?
Yeah,
see it right
Mirabai.
here.
Yeah,
What was it?
Mirabai.
Oh,
Yes.
and so, okay, so let's say you have a fight. I mean, you have a falling out
Yeah.
with the divine, like you sometimes have a falling out with your, earthly partner. I mean, at least the way I try to fix the earthly one is to get into an open, compassionate communication cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the parallel here now in the relationship?
I have a story for you.
Okay.
So, there was a village that was suffering from a drought. And this dervish comes walking through the village, and they say, oh, look, it's a holy man. Hey, can you help us end this drought? And the dervish looks around and he says, yeah, sure, bring me a bucket of water. And they bring him the last bucket of water in the village. And he takes off his coat and he starts washing it in the bucket of water. And everybody is horrified because that's their last bucket of water. And he's going, no, wait, just wait. And so he takes the bucket, he takes the coat, and he wrings it out, and he hangs it up on the line to dry. And the moment it gets on the line and starts drying, it rains. And it rains heavy. And the rain is coming down. And they all look at him and say, that's amazing. And he says, no, it's not amazing. God and I are having an argument right now. So that story contains an answer to this. Can anybody see what the answer is?
David, did I see your hand up tentatively? No? Okay. Jonathan, do you want to take a stab? No.
Well, it will certainly involve proactive engagement, right? I mean, rather than simply sitting back and, hoping for rain, you're basically engaging with, in this case, the other terminal. And so, and it's almost like an invitation for the other side to almost be a joker in this case, I guess.
Yeah,
That's kind of what it strikes me as.
It can break the stalemate.
Yeah.
So often that's how it works, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, in a way of breaking through the rigidity and whatever tension and resentment and animosity and just that negative stuff, if you can just find a way to shake it up with some humor and playfulness, it doesn't necessarily delete the whole problem, but it allows you to approach it from a different angle.
Aisha had a comment I saw flash by me.
I think it was Levita actually. Sometimes the argument is the topic, not the issue. I think it's a question more.
Yeah, sometimes the argument is the topic, not the issue. The way that this worked out is the dervish did not try to make God wrong. The dervish made himself vulnerable to the divine, and the divine playfully rained on the dervish's coat, thereby ending the drought. And that kind of interplay is very important.
And I can certainly testify that it works quite well sometimes in arguments with my wife. I
Yeah.
won't go into what kind of jokes we pull on each other, but
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we tease each other a lot.
We do.
Guru Mushtaq, I had just posted or sent you a direct message because I didn't want to bother everyone, but all I had said was that reading the book about Mullah Nasruddin, you prescribed that for me 2 decades ago because you said I was too serious. I mean, you were very right about that.
You were very, very serious back then.
It's true. And it also reminds me of Goha and the donkey, like the Egyptian version of Mullah Nasruddin.
Yep. Yeah, Mullah Nasruddin is everywhere, in every place, in every culture, in one form or another. He is the archetypal trickster. And he always has a donkey or some variation of it.
And Goha really loved his wife. My spouse always jokes about that because there's a famous story where Goha, someone asked him where his country is, and he says, "My country is wherever my wife is."
See, he was smart. And that in itself is a perfect teaching for this. Lost in reverie there. So
Yeah.
anyway, we're coming up on almost an hour and a half doing this talking. What do we know? What do we think? I'm going to actually switch this over to Brady Bunch mode so we can all see each other. And Levita, what do you think?
I don't have much success in this area, so I have literally been just sitting here listening.
Okay.
The I totally agree with what you have said today, because I have actually had that happen to me. It's only been, see, this is 2022. So it's only been in the past 2 years that I realized that I've actually never had a relationship with anybody. It has always been object. Like, I view people as subjects, but I've actually never been in a relationship where I have actually been a subject.
Yeah.
I've always been an object. Friendships, intimate relationships, the whole thing. So I don't have any I don't have anything really pithy to say about any of it, except like, yeah, I'm over here just listening. I'm gonna have to listen to this replay a few more times.
Yeah. And that goes to something that I learned from my little sister, one of my little sisters, which is boys are stupid.
Woo, woo. I could tell stories, but we don't have that much time.
Yeah, I bet you could tell.
And I don't mean from my life, just observation.
Mhm.
And it like, once I started actually learning more and paying attention, it was just like, wow.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there are very few adults or even people on the path to adulthood, people who are working toward it. I consider myself, I'm working toward it. And I'm finding that I'm not encountering as many people as I would have thought who are working toward it or who are there.
This is a
which I
constant
found-
problem.
Yeah, because you think, oh, well, they're such and so age. And then you start talking to them and you're like,
A number means nothing.
I need, like, yeah, they've got like, they're like 5 years old with 30, 40, 50 years of experience being 5. And
Yeah.
then you're like, I
Yep.
need to go to the store to get some cigarettes. You want anything? And then you never return. Yeah. And see, the tip on that is I don't smoke. So like, they're like,
Intent, yeah.
so, but yeah, so I don't really have anything. I'm literally listening for some wisdom myself.
If you find any, let us know.
Thanks, Levita.
I will say this, and this is something I actually saw at a comedy club. A comedian got up on stage at the mic and he told a bunch of jokes, very funny guy. And he says, okay, I'm going to tell you everything I know about the clitoris.
Silence.
Yeah.
And it took the audience like a full 10 seconds to get it. And then everybody fell out. And that's kind of how I feel about relationships.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Which is relevant.
yeah.
Put in the effort, people. Take time
Well,
to
yeah.
learn. Yeah.
Oh, I do have a question. This
Yes.
is my therapist asked me this question.
Sure.
And she said, you don't have to answer it now. And I looked at her and I said, I got nothing. I don't need a week. I got nothing. The question is this: what does a relationship look like for you if you're not always doing something for the other person? And I was like, so that's been my question of the week for other people.
Yeah.
Like, because I was
For
taught, make
me,
yourself useful.
that's really easy. It looks like snuggling up together on the couch and watching something stupid on Netflix. It's waking up in the morning and the first thing I get to do is tell Nora how beautiful she is. It's just hanging out with her and going, wow. Not even wow anything, just wow. Sometimes,
Hey.
wow, you're amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for
I
me,
mean-
that's what it is. I don't.
It's
some-
the connectedness.
Yeah,
Just the latent connectedness. It doesn't need to be explicit at any given moment with acts of, oh, we should touch on making a habit of affection, shouldn't we?
Yes, we should.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think makes our relationship so much fun is we do not let a day go by without letting the other know just how much we appreciate them. And we do it in ways that resonate for us. It is said by people undoubtedly wiser than me that everybody has their own language for love. And for some people, it's giving a gift. For another person, it might be touch. For a third person, it might be service. Who knows? There could be 1,000 different ways. But it is incredibly important to be able to answer the question, how does he or she know that they're loved? And
Yes.
you do that. It's not, how do I know that I'm loved? It's how does she know that she's loved?
And this is kind of, we were talking about like the clitoris, as you were saying, Levita, but this goes for anything. Like, how do we find out how to express care to the person that we care about in a way that resonates for them, specifically for them? And that takes experimentation, takes curiosity, it takes willingness.
Being willing to receive feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yep. If someone says to you, I don't like receiving flowers, they remind me of, dying plants. That's fair. Okay, what do they like instead? I personally love flowers, by the way, but I understand people who feel that way.
And so because she loves, go ahead. Yes.
No, I was just going to say that my personal experience has been whenever I have said, because I was told, if somebody does something for you that you enjoy, let them know,
Mm-hmm.
Because that way, not to say that they're going to give you more of it, but so that they know that what they did was not in vain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And my experience has been that vulnerability invites abuse in my life. So if I say I like flowers, which has happened to me, I received flowers and it was like amazing, like gorgeous type flowers. And then when I said, oh, I really enjoyed those flowers, I never received flowers again. It was just the weirdest thing. And I can laugh about it today.
Yeah, just remember my little sister's rule.
Yeah, which is?
Boys are stupid.
Yes, this is true. Unfortunately, many times boys are in disguise. They don't look like boys because I'm not a pedophile. I like men. And unfortunately, there are many people out here who look like adult men, but as you talk to them, you realize they are not. And sometimes by the time you realize they are not, this is not happening to me now, but when I was younger, by the time you realize they are not adult men, you're already entangled emotionally, sexually, etc. And it's harder to, it's like inviting a vampire in. It's easier to get them in than it is to get them out. So.
Yeah. Yep. It's true.
All right.
So.
Okay. Take good care.
Yeah, and we need to wrap this up. Swati, it was wonderful having you again. Thank you. Yeah, I'm starting to starve. I'm looking at all of that cooking that Aisha is having over there, and it's making me hungry.
Well, I just do.
I have to say bye.
Bye. Take good care.
Bye.
Great
Take
to
care.
see you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Does anyone have any last questions before we wrap up, or things they want to share? People who haven't spoken yet.
Yes.
Nancy.
Yeah, one fast thing. This is something, I don't know, I think I learned around age 25 or 30. I was surprised to realize that I thought men had desires and women had emotions, with the difference being that desire is wanting something and emotion is a reaction to getting it or not getting it. And I don't know, this seems so crazy. You know, basically, I didn't do like tremendous work on myself to find out I was wrong. I just looked at men's faces and I realized they have emotions.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know whether this is like cultural weirdness or what, but
I would not be surprised if there's a bit of,
Yeah.
cultural indoctrination around that ended up giving you that impression. I don't think it's anything that you did that is, about you, but I really find it fascinating that you were able to observe and learn from your observations that perhaps it wasn't true.
you know, I didn't realize what I'd even been thinking till I found out it wasn't true.
Yeah. I mean, that happens with so many different things we believe about gender and relationships and, intimacy. So you're certainly not alone in that. We come up with all kinds of weird ideas that we all think are true and that we are shocked to find are not true. And we know for a fact that everybody has desires. So they may not take the same form or have the same flavor or anything like that, but we all do have them. And I'm not necessarily talking solely about sexual desires. So thank you, Nancy. That's a very good point. Anybody else? Jonathan, you got anything you want to say? Nope.
Nothing to
David?
add.
Okay, good.
I'm excited that love languages came up, or whatever you want to call them, because I can give a really good gift. I can put together a party or something, but it really doesn't resonate to that highest level to my partner, and I'm just beginning to receive the feedback that I'm speaking his love language. So it's really exciting to be doing something new that I'm getting better at, that really small efforts go a long way. So that was exciting that came up.
That's awesome. Yeah. And, some people have a problem with the original people who produced the book that talks about love languages and stuff. But as an idea, I think it's a very legitimate thing that is obviously, as you can say from your lived experience, is worth thinking about in terms of what our partner needs and wants from us. So absolutely. Thank you.
I have a comment about the baby flower thing. My husband, we go to, I think, and going to what David's saying, you have to educate your partner in how you want to be treated sometimes. And so with my husband, we go to the market every Sunday morning and I say, now we have to go get flowers. He goes, gets the flowers every Sunday morning. It's now his thing. He goes, gets the flowers. He makes the arrangement. He cuts them and he puts them in the water. It doesn't mean he's going to change the water in the vase every day. He just doesn't do it. I have fresh flowers. We have big lilies. We have a big arrangement in our house every week. It's changed over. He will change it a bit. But I had to educate him. I want fresh flowers in the house. And so we do it together. And so if I want something, I have to remind him sometimes. Not all the time, but remind him sometimes. This is what I like. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't want shoes in the house. Put your shoes over here. Oh, yeah. Okay. And not give him a hard time when he doesn't remember. But when he does, it's fabulous. It's beautiful.
Yes.
It's wonderful. You're creating your environment that you want to live in together. And so I tell him, we both like making beautiful space. And so that means also the way we talk to each other. Yes, we do fall down a lot, but it's just part of what the partnership is, because then it also the blessing is I can see, oh, I have to work on that. I have to work on that. And as Mushtaq says, it's not that, you know, he's dumb, but he's just really literal. So I have to be literal and say, let's get the flowers. You go over there, talk to Patrick, get the flowers, and then off we go. And he may choose something that's a bit different. And I tell him, oh, that's lovely. That's a different color. I didn't see that was in season. So that's a really nice thing. So he just can't wait to go and do it again. And he does it every week now. So we do it together. And that's one of the things that we do together. So that's a nice way of fostering that love in our partnership. The end.
Thanks, Shuri. So I think we can all continue to encourage each other wherever we're at, you know, whatever our priorities might be right now in finding a relationship or not, just fostering really excellent friendships, perhaps maybe our journey. But the same stuff applies in a lot of ways. So we're all able to participate in this. So we're in Brady Bunch mode already, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us and for enriching the conversation, all of you. And it's been nice to have a few unexpected folks join us too. Thanks, Aisha.
Yep, made my whole night.
Yeah. And I guess that's it. And
Yeah,
we will
right back at
see you
ya.
guys soon.
All right, folks, take care. And yeah, next week. Oh, next week we are probably going to be talking about the hidden prophet, Al-Khidr.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And that's going to be fun. Noor might not be with
Yeah,
us.
I may not be. I'm visiting a friend who is moving soon. So.
But you know what that means? It will be way more chaotic than usual, but ever so much fun.
All right, have fun, all of you. See you
All
next
right,
week.
take care. Bye.